Joining us right now from CBS Sports. Joining us for the first time this season, our old friend. We've been together for years and years and years for a reason. I don't know why he puts up with us, but boy, do we love him. The one, the only, Dave Richard. Dave, it's Dave. That's Jay. Good morning. How are you?
What's up, gentlemen? Am I interrupting something here? Frozen pizza, dead grass, scents?
Here's the thing. Dave, you do a lot of radio shows, and I feel like you know by now, you do all these radio shows in these giant markets. They're professional. They have good, hard-hitting football questions. Normally, the intro would be something like 97.9 WLMB. It's Boomer and Cheeky in the morning, and right now we've got your fantasy football questions ready to go with CBS Sports' Dave Richard. Dave, is Adrian Peterson going to be a factor, and would you draft him at? I mean, you know that we don't do that.
First of all, I don't know why you have to disparage Boomer and Cheeky. Okay, they've been number 3 in the ratings in Sheboygan for at least the last 6 years, and they're really good guys. Okay,
That's
so
true.
don't do them like that.
I apologize.
No, the reason why I always come back to you reluctantly, of course, is because you ask different questions than other people. There are a lot of people who get fantasy football who are on the radio. You're one of them, but you come at it from a different angle, and it's like a critical thinking exercise for me every time I come on the air with you. Sometimes it's just, hey, you've got a ton of phone calls, let's serve the people, and that's great. But sometimes you ask me questions about, well, how did you come to this decision? How did you come to that? And I get to talk about like the mental process of being a fantasy football writer, which really doesn't seem like it's like some sort of, I'm a rocket scientist. It's not like that at all. It's more like, getting an opportunity to explain, there's a lot more that goes into it than just throwing the dart against the wall and saying, okay, we're going to draft Antonio Gibson in round 6 now. It's appreciated. It's refreshing. You are refreshing.
Look at this.
So that's why I'm here to talk to you and to Jay as much as I possibly can.
That is a hell of a way to start out the new season. We're going to go downhill from here. And Jay, we were just talking about this yesterday. My favorite thing about talking to Dave is it's the philosophies of fantasy football. So there are 2 things we update every year. I'll get to the first one. Where are you when it comes to 2 quarterback leagues? That's my passion, and every year I ask you, and every year you give me an update on your thought process. 2 quarterbacks starting standard football leagues. Your thoughts?
I think it's gaining steam, and I think the reason for it is because people see these quarterbacks on draft day, and there's like 18 of them that you look at and you go, oh yeah, I'd be cool with him starting. And you look at most fantasy football rank lists, and guys like Aaron Rodgers and Cam Newton, dudes who have been around for a long time, they're not ranked where they used to be ranked. And even Tom Brady and Drew Brees aren't ranked where they used to be ranked. Now we're seeing kind of a changing of the guard, which happens in football, obviously. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, they're at the top because they've always been so good, or not always, just as recently as they've been given the chance. Can't talk about them like they've been playing for, 3 years. They haven't been doing that. But fantasy managers are gravitating toward quarterbacks who run more, throw less, and it's pushing down those quarterbacks that throw a lot and get good numbers, but don't necessarily run. And there's a lot of those guys. And so there's this crazy depth, and a lot of people say, well, why can't we use those guys? So 2 quarterback leagues are starting to catch on, but super flex leagues are what's really starting to catch on. And that's when you start 1 quarterback, typical, usual stuff, and then you have a super flex that can be any position, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, total wild card. And because quarterbacks tend to put up more points than other positions, like a great week from Saquon Barkley could be worth the same as a very good week from Ryan Tannehill, which makes no sense. It's archaic scoring in fantasy, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. And if that's what your league scoring is, then you want to take advantage of it by having a second quarterback in your lineup. So it's getting bigger, Dave. You were ahead of the curve on that.
Love it.
Dave Richard, CBS Sports, joining us. Dave, we were talking about how guys are, not ranked as high as they used to be. I want to throw 3 running backs out there at you, and you tell me in 2020 if any of these guys have value to you. David Johnson, sure. Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley.
So you named 3 guys that are on my don't want to draft list, which means I'll take them, but they've got to be at the right spot on draft day. Gurley is the one that's the most appealing because I think his situation is probably the best. And last year he made his hay by scoring 14 touchdowns, and now that he's the primary guy in Atlanta, not that I think he's going to get 12 or 1,300 yards, but I think he could get 10 touchdowns again if he manages to stay healthy, and they're not pushing him too much in training camp and in practices. They know what he can do. They've certainly given him the benefit of the doubt, and he deserves it. Le'Veon Bell just seems like he's in a tragic situation in New York with the Jets. They brought in Frank Gore. They like Frank Gore. Reports say that Frank Gore's looked better in camp than Le'Veon Bell. That sounds preposterous to me. I don't know how that could even be possible. But coaches have this thing where they love to trust veteran players who go about the game the right way and practice the right way, and then they put them in a game and they stink. But somehow, some way, Frank Gore is going to get 10 carries a game this year, and it's going to take away from Le'Veon, who already had a career-low 20.7 touches per game last year, and he couldn't even sniff the end zone, man. Like, he barely scored. He was brutal. He's even worse in non-PPR. And David Johnson is a 28-year-old running back who's changing teams and has averaged well below 4 yards per carry over his last 2 seasons. This is a Texans offense that has completely bumbled how they use running backs over the past couple of years. Johnson was a catch magnet in Arizona. Houston's running backs with Deshaun Watson under center have averaged, this is all the running backs, cumulative, 54 catches per season. And you look at David Johnson, you go, well, he should be good for more than 54 catches by himself, but that's just not how the Texans have operated. And it would take a fundamental change in how they play football to get David Johnson more involved in the passing game. And that's assuming that he can stay healthy because he's been dealing with injuries. And the last time we saw David Johnson play, he looked like he was 35 years old, man. He was just not fast at all. So I'm avoiding those guys. Gurley, if he falls to round 4, I guess I'll hold my nose and take him. I pass on Le'Veon Bell in a half PPR league in round 6. That's how much I really just don't want Le'Veon Bell. I'm nervous about the situation. He might need the Fournette treatment, where if he gets traded somehow, some way out of New York, his value would really rise. But the Jets stand out to me as a team that could be in trouble to find wins this year.
CBS Sports' Dave Richard joining us. We'll get to all the different ways you can consume yourself some Dave Richard as you try to win your fantasy football league. You can call us at 1-800-920-1140 or text us, and we will try to get to your questions. I want to follow up here. I couldn't agree with you more on all three, and I want you to help me. Todd Gurley is, to me, one of the biggest enigmas I've seen in a long time in fantasy sports. When you look at his numbers up until last year, they were phenomenal. He's 26 years old, and even last year, over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, he had 14 touchdowns, and you saw some competition around him. You saw Sean Payton after Gurley kind of trailed off the year before, try to kind of take him out of the spotlight a little bit. Now he goes back home to Georgia, where he played college ball. He's playing for the Falcons, which have some offensive weapons. Is there a chance that he was just misused towards the end in Los Angeles and we could see a return of, oh yeah, he's 26, he's really good, he's Todd Gurley, or is there something underlying there that really bothers you about him?
He was among the worst pass-catching running backs last year in the National Football League. He averaged less than a yard per route run, I believe. And usually if you're a running back and you can get 1 yard per route run, that's pretty good. He was around 0.56 yards per route run. This was a man who was routinely running routes and getting a ton of catches and being used as a two-way player in the Rams offense. It was the same coaching staff in 2018 and 2019. They know what we've all heard and have seen, and it's been reported, and you watch him play, and that's he's got an injury that has slowed him down. He will have occasional bursts of explosiveness where he looks like, it's almost like Derrick Rose in basketball,
right,
where you will see occasional flashes of very good play, very good athleticism, but otherwise, he leaves you almost sad, because the guy who used to be just so incredible is now just kind of, he's a step slower for sure, the majority of the time, and he's got to rely on being physical. And he's someone that I think the Falcons wanted to upgrade on Devontae Freeman, because he was kind of the same way. He wasn't making all kinds of plays. He lost his explosiveness, and they got him for $5 million, and he would bring some excitement to the team because he's a former Georgia Bulldog. And maybe, just maybe, there's something that they can pull out of him that'll make him a little bit better than Devontae Freeman. And the Falcons have painted themselves into a corner here because their only other running backs are Ito Smith and Brian Hill and Kadre Allison, and these are guys that are at best average. And Gurley, I think we can say, is better than average, but he's not the headliner that he used to be. And if anything goes awry with this arthritic knee, you know he's going to miss a ton of time. So there's a huge amount of risk. And there are people that are still gladly taking Todd Gurley in round 3.
Wow.
I can't do it.
Wow.
Dave Richards, CBS Sports, joining us. Dave, I want to look at the Raiders offense. I think there's a lot that people are going to be investing into a guy like Josh Jacobs. We saw what Darren Waller could do last year, but I'm really interested in this receiving corps, especially Bryan Edwards. With that Raiders receiving corps, who are you looking at as a guy that could be a sleeper?
I guess Ruggs would best qualify as a sleeper, although everybody knows who he is and everybody knows how fast he is. But really, I look at this Raiders team as one of several around the league that's going to try and just be more spread. They want to spread around all the targets. I don't think Waller's getting anywhere near as much action as he had last year, and he doesn't have to because they've added Ruggs, they've got Edwards. The coaches seem to love Nelson Aguilar, which, I mean, people who watch the games can't imagine why, but those who are watching the practices are the ones who make the decisions, and Aguilar can end up being a decent option for them. Hunter Renfrow can end up being a good pass catcher for them. Josh Jacobs, though, is going to be the one that everybody's going to go after. And I don't see a path for him to get 50-plus catches. That's usually what you need to have a chance to be an elite fantasy running back. So I think if there is a sleeper, Ruggs is probably going to be that guy. People are going to look for him in round 9. You know, we've had this surge of other rookies kind of pass Ruggs by in the rankings. Antonio Gibson is just the latest one. Zach Moss is another one. But CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, those two are absolutely passing him up. People are very excited about them. Ruggs should be right there with them. So if you can find him round 9, round 10, and you can start the season with him on your bench, he's got a chance to be like a Will Fuller type, where there's going to be weeks where you start him and you bang your head against the wall because he gets 3 catches for 35 yards. And then there's going to be some weeks where he gets 7 catches, 175 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And it just so happens that one of those weeks could be week 1 against Carolina because that defense is not looking good.
Dave Richard with us, CBS Sports. Big hot topic. I'm sure you've dealt with it a billion times. We do try to ask you different questions, but occasionally we got to ask you the questions everybody wants to know. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. Where are you seeing them go? Where should they go? And for guys like me who have Nick Chubb and have had him every year he's been in the league, are we smart in worrying? Do we handcuff? Anyways, all the questions, you've dealt with them before. What are you doing with that situation?
So what I'm most concerned about with this Browns run game is that they're going to mix and match Chubb and Hunt without any rhyme or reason because they're both good pass catchers. Hunt may be a little bit more established in that regard than Chubb, but Chubb proved last year in those first 8 games without Hunt that he could catch the football. I think he was averaging right around 3 catches per game. They're both amazing talents at running the football. Chubb is a little bit more explosive than Hunt, maybe a lot more explosive. I shouldn't say a little. He's more explosive than Hunt. There, I said it.
Yeah.
But they're both going to get a lot of work, and I could see a scenario where the Browns, who upgraded their offensive line this offseason, will run Chubb out there for 3, 4, 5 plays. Okay, you're tired. Go ahead, Kareem. You're out there for 3, 4, 5 plays. And we're near the goal line. Doesn't matter. Go ahead, 3, 4, 5 plays for whoever's out there. And they just rotate that way versus, okay, Nick, you're our first down guy, and you're our second down guy. But if it's a long second down, then Kareem's the guy. The only area where I think Kareem Hunt might have an edge over Chubb is in the 2-minute drill, where they're just hurrying up and they need a pass-catching running back. He just might be too good of an option to leave on the bench. But then when they get inside the 10, it could be Chubb. So it's really going to be confusing. And when you're drafting Nick Chubb, there's some people that are still taking him in round 1 in non-PPR leagues. I can't do it because if they're splitting this way, and again, this is my assumption. This is not how it's going to be, but I highly doubt there's going to be a scenario where it's Chubb for 20 touches a game and Kareem Hunt for like 5. Just doesn't make sense. The Browns are going to need to feed them both each and every week. That seems problematic because they could be playing from behind. Their defense is a little suspect, and that could mean that they're sharing maybe 25 touches per week, or even worse, 20 touches per week. And in those weeks where things are going just perfect for Cleveland, and week 1 will not be one of those weeks against the Ravens, then they might not do well they might share 20 if they're struggling. And if they're doing great, they might split 40 carries. And what does that mean for Odell Beckham? He's going to have a bad game, and Austin Hooper's going to have a bad game, and Jarvis Landry's going to have a bad game. So while they've got a lot of big-name talent, I'm concerned that the results won't necessarily match up. And by the end of the year, Chubb won't be a top 12 running back because he's not getting the type of work that a top 12 running back gets. But Kareem Hunt won't exactly be a 25th ranked running back because he's going to get maybe theoretically the same type of work that Nick Chubb gets. So if I'm drafting one, I like the value on Hunt better than Chubb. But if I've got Chubb as my keeper, do I want to go and get Kareem Hunt to go along with him? If it's convenient. But then again, am I going to start both each week? And am I going to feel good about it week one against the Ravens? That's not a good matchup. You might not get good points out of either one of them that week.
Dave Richard, CBS Sports, joining us this morning. Dave, for those of us that are still in the archaic one-quarterback league,
no.
I'm going back and forth. Do I use a first or second round pick on a Lamar Jackson or Patrick Holmes if they're available? Or do you feel there's still going to be quarterbacks available in round 5, 6, 7 that it makes more sense to go that direction?
Dave will tell you that I've been all over waiting on a quarterback for about the last 6 or 7 years.
Yep.
And I still think it's the best strategy to go with. And when I'm drafting with people that take Mahomes and Lamar Jackson in round 1, well, that just pushes really good talent to me when I'm picking 10th, 11th, or 12th, not just in round 1, but in round 2 as well. And that's why you can't take the quarterbacks that soon. If you absolutely have to have Patrick Mahomes, you think he's going to have another 50-touchdown season, round 2 at the absolute earliest, and probably the back half of round 2 is when to do it. But round 3 is really the sweet spot. That's a value. And when you're up in your draft and you see a quarterback on the board and you can't believe that he's still on the board, that's when you know that it's the right time to take a quarterback. There are just too many of them out there. We talked about this as the catalyst for 2 quarterback and superflex leagues. There are too many of them out there to be to race to get a quarterback on draft day.
Dave Richard with us. We will tell you in just a second where you can read, see, hear him, all that stuff. But longtime listeners will know this going back years and years and years. Dave and I.
Oh, here we go.
You know it's coming, dude. We have.
And I think I'm going to make you very unhappy, but go ahead.
We have a tradition. Tradition is Alpha of the Year. And this all goes back to Washington football team's Alfred Morris. Really a better way of saying kind of a pick to click, the guy that maybe is not on your board in the draft, the guy that's going to step up that Dave and I both adopt for the year and win fantasy leagues with. And I have yet to hear your Alf of 2020. And when we talked last, you had not yet had a 2020 Alf. Has that changed? Dave? Did we lose Dave?
Still on that.
Oh, hold on.
Can you hear us?
I'm here, but
there.
I hear,
gotcha.
I hear somebody giving a news report.
Oh, that's on us. That's our news guy piping in there with his recording. Our apologies. All right, so I did that whole intro, and then we had a technical error. That's you don't get that with Boomer and what's his face. Where are we at with
Cheeky?
Where are we at with Cheeky and Boomer? Where are we at with Alf 2020?
We are still in neutral. We don't have a guy, and a big reason for it is because there is no preseason football, and that has always been part of the process, is watching not only how these guys do in preseason games, but how they're being used. It's what put me over the top on Darren Waller last year. It's what's put me over the top on guys like Michael Gallup and Kenny Golladay in the past. And look, there are candidates, and I can give you a list of names. Jared Goff is on the list. Jonnu Smith is on the list. Antonio Gibson would have been the guy, but once Darius Geis got cut, he became too popular. And now, of course, Adrian Peterson is that guy. I'm still looking into it. I don't know if I can give you a name that I'm absolutely going to draft besides Goff, maybe. Jonnu Smith, maybe. I've got people trying to convince me on Auden Tate of the Cincinnati Bengals, Paris Campbell of the Indianapolis Colts. Okay. Dave, I'm not going to force it.
Good.
If I don't have that really good feeling about that one guy, I'm not going to put him out there and say, okay, let's all go draft him, only to see him fall on his face. If I don't have that guy, if I'm not comfortable with it, we're not going to have that late round sleeper. But today's the day. If I can't get one by today, then I'm not going to have one at all. So keep an eye on my Twitter timeline, at Dave Richard on Twitter. If by late this evening I don't have anybody, then that's it. We don't have one this year, and that would suck, but that would just be the way things go.
I respect it. You cannot force the elf. Do not force the elf. There's too much respect
Never.
for that. I completely get that. David, where can people hear, watch, see, all that fun stuff?
Okay, so I already told you about the Twitter handle.
Yeah.
Now I can tell you about CBS Sports HQ. It's the live 24/7 streaming sports network by CBS Sports that's available on any device that gets Wi-Fi, and it's free. We don't even want your email address.
Wow.
And you can start enjoying CBS Sports HQ at, what time is it going to be out there? If it's noon Eastern, it's 9 a.m. Pacific time. Fantasy Football Today live, where we're going to break down everything that's going on in Washington. We didn't really talk about that. We'll get into what's going on in Tampa Bay's backfield. You didn't bother me about Ronald Jones. Thank you very much for that, Dave.
Welcome.
But that's where you go. CBS Sports HQ, 9 a.m. Pacific. We'll get you ready for your drafts this weekend. And we're going to start getting you ready for week 1 because we're less than a week away from football.
Wow.
Thank God.
Thank goodness. The best in the business, Dave Richard, on his way to do Boomer and Cheeky. We appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you very, very soon.
I swear to God, I was about to say, Dave, I got to run. Boomer and Cheeky's producer, Laszlo, is on the line. I got to run.
Laszlo Holyfeld. I love it. All right, dude. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
You got it, bud. Be good, you too.
You too. That's Dave Richard.